Welcome back to the deep dive. So today we're jumping into a figure who is, I mean, just a massive
A
contradiction.
complete paradox, really.
Yeah, Pablo Emilio Escobar Gaviria. When you look at the source material, it's like you're reading about two different people.
It is. It's the absolute core of his story. On one hand, you have this community savior, the guy who built homes for thousands of people in Medellin,
A local hero.
genuinely beloved. And then you have the other side, the ruthless, calculating narco-terrorist who brought a democratic state to its knees.
Exactly, building neighborhoods and funding soccer fields with one hand and, bombing civilian airliners with the other.
He had 80% of the world's cocaine trade, but it was never just about the money, was it?
No, he wanted legitimacy. He wanted respect.
And that's really our mission for this deep dive, to trace that entire arc. How did he manage to be both these things at once? We want to get into the specifics of how he used fear and philanthropy to build this incredible power structure.
Right. And by the end, you should have a much clearer picture of not just what he did, but what his story teaches us about power, money, and corruption.
It's a critical lesson.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning. His origins. He was born in Rio Negro, 1949, grew up in Medellin,
Right, to a farmer and a school teacher, a very modest, very humble upbringing.
which it seems he just completely rejected from the get-go.
Oh, absolutely. That reckless ambition was there very early. His criminal career started small, but it was a real training ground.
Small is right. We're talking about stealing tombstones from cemeteries.
Yeah, stealing them, sanding them down, and then reselling them. He sold fake high school diplomas, smuggled some electronics, petty stuff.
But even then, as a teenager, he had this incredible focus, this one goal.
That quote, right?
I'll be a millionaire by 22.
And the thing is, he said it and he meant it. And what's really fascinating is that the world was, in a way, just waiting for someone like him. The 1970s created this horrifying vacuum.
A perfect storm.
A perfect storm is exactly it. You have to understand, before the 70s, Colombian organized crime was mostly about, like, smuggling marijuana,
A totally different scale.
a different universe. Then the global demand for cocaine just explodes. It creates this immediate, incredibly high-margin market.
And the Colombian state wasn't really equipped to handle it.
The state barely had a presence in a lot of these remote rural areas. It was weak. So when Escobar decided to get into cocaine trafficking, he wasn't fighting against a strong, established system.
He was filling a void.
He was filling a void. He used his smuggling experience, his absolute ruthlessness, and he just took over. He became an early monopolist in this brand new, unbelievably lucrative trade.
And that ruthlessness is what led to the Medellin cartel. But you've called it a parallel state before.
I have.
That's a really strong claim. What makes it more than just a massive criminal enterprise?
It's a vital distinction. I mean, sure, they used Plata silver bribes to corrupt officials. That's standard.
But they also had the Plomo, the leader.
Right. But they went so far beyond that. A state needs infrastructure, right? It needs control over territory, a treasury, a way to enforce its laws. The cartel built all of that for itself, privately.
So let's detail that infrastructure because it's not a couple of guys in a warehouse.
No, not even close. By the early 1980s, the cartel was a global operation. They controlled the coca farms, the massive processing labs deep in the jungle, fleets of airplanes,
Private airstrips?
private airstrips, submarines, sophisticated shipping routes. And the financial infrastructure was just as complex. They had entire systems for laundering billions of dollars through legitimate businesses. Their cash flow was, for a long time, practically untraceable.
The scale is what's so hard to grasp. That one statistic, it's just mind-blowing.
The 80% number.
80% of the global market share by the 80s, they were moving tons of cocaine every single month.
That kind of dominance leads to wealth that you can't even really measure. It becomes mythic. You hear the stories about the Hacienda Nápoles, his private zoo with hippos.
Jets and mansions hidden all over the country.
But I think the best way to understand the burden of that much physical cash is that famous anecdote, the $2 million fire.
Right. This is where it just gets surreal. He had a cash problem.
A logistics problem. When you have billions of dollars in physical bills, what do you do with it? You can't just deposit it. You have to store it, guard it. They were losing something like 10% of it to rats and water damage.
Just writing it off.
And the story goes that one night, when he was on the run, hiding out with his family, his daughter got sick. She was cold.
And so he started a fire.
He started a fire with $2 million in bundled U.S. cash. Just burned it. to keep her warm for a few hours.
$2 million is kindling. That one story tells you everything you need to know about the financial reality he was living in. It's just another world.
It is. So you have that reality.
Yeah.
And then you have to reconcile it with his public image in Medellin. Because to a huge number of people there, he was a hero.
He was their savior.
And this is where you see his strategic genius, or maybe his populist manipulation. He knew that money could buy more than just things. It could buy protection.
So the philanthropy, the houses, the clinics, that wasn't just charity.
It was a highly functional two-pronged strategy. First, yes, it bought him genuine loyalty, real affection. People loved him for it. But second, and this is the critical part, it created an impenetrable security network.
How so?
The people in the neighborhoods he built became his eyes and ears. To them, the police were the enemy, the state was the corrupt invader. Escobar was their provider.
So if the army tried to move into those neighborhoods,
They faced a wall of silence, total non-cooperation. The community he built with his money actively shielded him from the state.
he weaponized goodwill, turned loyalty into an intelligence network.
Precisely. And his downfall, really, it began when he decided that wasn't enough. Being the powerful king in the shadows wasn't enough for him.
He wanted more. He wanted the system to accept him.
He wanted immunity, political immunity, and he thought he knew how to get it.
In 1982, he wins a seat as an alternate representative in the Colombian Congress. He thinks the political robes are going to be his permanent shield.
A huge miscalculation, because he underestimated the opposition. And one man in particular.
Justice Minister Rodrigo Lara Bonilla.
Exactly. Lara refused to play along. He stood up in Congress, on national television, and just laid it all out. He exposed Escobar's entire criminal history, his drug ties, for the whole country to see.
For a man whose power was built on this image of respect and fear, that kind of public humiliation must have been
Devastating. And it was the trigger. That one moment, that public shaming, it caused an immediate explosive shift. He went from trying to bribe the state to declaring all-out war on it.
And that's when we enter the era of Plata o Plomo.
Silver or lead.
Take the bribe or take the bullet. Simple as that.
And this wasn't just a simple campaign of assassinations. The sources show it was a form of sophisticated psychological warfare. The goal was to completely dismantle the state itself.
He wasn't just targeting politicians.
No, he was targeting institutions, the very pillars of democracy.
What did that actually look like on the ground? What was the effect?
Institutional paralysis. Judges were so terrified they fled the country or just resigned en masse. The entire judicial system started to collapse.
And politicians.
They were afraid to even show up to vote on anything that might anger the cartel. Then came the bombings. The DAS building, a government intelligence agency. The bombing of Avianca Flight 203, killing over 100 people just to try and kill one presidential candidate.
So he created this climate of absolute terror.
Pervasive terror, where any public official understood that working with the government against the cartel was a death sentence. He was literally making the state non-functional.
And yet, even with this open war raging, when the pressure got to be too much, he still managed to negotiate a surrender on his own terms.
Which brings us to maybe the most bizarre chapter in this whole saga.
La Catedral.
La Catedral. The perfect symbol of his arrogance, his hubris. He agreed to surrender in 1991, but only on one condition.
That he got to build his own prison.
And prison is a very generous word for what he built.
It was a luxury fortress, is the only way to describe it.
Staffed by his own hand-picked guards. At a bar, a huge TV room, a waterfall, a full-size football pitch where he'd fly in the national team for matches.
A jacuzzi.
A jacuzzi. The whole point of the surrender was to avoid being extradited to the United States. But he had no intention of stopping his business.
No, the sources are clear. He ran his entire global drug empire from inside La Catedral.
The cartel continued to function without a hiccup. But that impunity, it finally reached a breaking point.
When he had two of his own top lieutenants tortured and murdered inside the prison.
That was it. That was the moment that created such a national and international crisis that the Colombian government was forced to act. They couldn't ignore it any longer.
So they decided to move him to a real prison, a legitimate one.
And in this just incredible display of power, the attempt to move him was completely botched. He just walked out. He escaped into hiding.
And that escape in July 1992 is what kicks off the final hunt.
The biggest manhunt in Colombian history. The state was now fully committed, and the U.S. was all in.
We need to be really clear about who was hunting him, though, because it wasn't just the police.
No, it was a very messy, very complicated,
A
Alon.
coalition of convenience.
That's a good way to put it. You had the official group, the Colombian Search Bloc, highly trained, government-sanctioned. You had heavy U.S. involvement from the DEA and the CIA, providing all this advanced surveillance tech.
And then you had the third group, Los Pepes.
Los Pepes,
Yeah.
which stands for People Persecuted by Pablo Escobar.
And who were they really?
They were a paramilitary death squad, a collection of his worst enemies, rival drug lords, former cartel members he'd betrayed, powerful people whose families he'd killed.
And they operated completely outside the law.
Completely. They used the same tactics of terror that Escobar had perfected. Bombings, assassinations. They went after his family, his lawyers, his accountants. Their goal was simple: wage a counter-terror campaign to completely isolate him.
So the state was essentially using an illegal death squad to hunt down its #1 enemy.
It's one of the darkest parts of the story. But by 1993, the combined strategy worked. Escobar's network was decimated. The terror that Los Pepes spread meant he couldn't trust anyone anymore.
Even the communities he built.
He became a ghost, totally isolated, paranoid, constantly on the move.
And in the end, it wasn't some brilliant military operation that caught him. It was a very human mistake.
A simple emotional error. He was so desperate to talk to his family, to his son.
He stayed on the phone too long.
He made a call, and he stayed on the line for just a few minutes. That was all they needed. The Search Bloc, using the American triangulation technology, pinpointed his location.
A safe house right in the middle of Medellin, December 2nd, 1993.
They raid the house. He tries to escape across the rooftops. A chase, a firefight, and that was the end.
The end of the reign of the king of cocaine. So we come back to that central question we started with. Hero or monster? How do you even begin to synthesize a legacy that is so contradictory?
You know, that debate over the man himself, it's probably going to continue forever in Colombia.
Yeah.
For the people living in the houses he built, the answer is still complicated.
But if we look at the bigger picture, the broader consequences,
Then I think the real legacy is much clearer. It's the deep systemic damage he did to the country's institutions. He didn't just kill people. He fundamentally weakened the rule of law. He made corruption and violence the norm.
and that damage doesn't just disappear when the man is gone.
Not at all. That template of violence, that culture of institutional corruption, it lingered for decades. It's a wound that takes a very, very long time to heal.
And his downfall really is its own chilling lesson. A power structure built entirely on money and fear might look invincible from the outside.
A private zoo, a luxury prison.
But in the end, it was incredibly fragile. The second those support systems started to break down, he was left with nothing.
Completely alone. And he died on a rooftop, just another criminal on the run.
It's a powerful reminder, isn't it? The dangerous appeal of these populist figures who use criminal money to buy themselves legitimacy.
It is. When you use corruption to buy the love and the loyalty of the people, that rot infects the entire political system. And that damage, the violence, the instability, the absolute lack of faith in government, that lasts so much longer than the individual.
A truly powerful thought to reflect on. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.